Hi there, Mr. Reardon here with the first of your videos on different aspects of the structure and mechanics of the English language. The first concept we're going to talk about is parts of speech. Um, Now, parts of speech are sort of the building block for many of the other concepts we'll be talking about. And so, even though it is a bit complex and there are a lot of different aspects to it, I think it's a good place for us to start. And you might actually find that the language concepts start hard and then get easier and easier as we go on. So here we go. First thing, what is a part of speech? So a part of speech is just a category of words in a language that have similar grammatical properties, right? So a given word's part of speech tells us how the word is to be used in a sentence, or it tells us the usage of the word, right? Now, for you, right, in AP English language, being able to recognize a given word's part of speech is the first step in unpacking a really complex sentence where you don't understand the meaning. Right, you don't get the sentence because the words do not add up to an idea in your brain that you can comprehend. Right, what do you have to do there in that situation? Well, you have to break the sentence up into pieces and you have to understand how it's built in order to gain that understanding. And that's really the reason why I think talking about all of these different grammatical pieces are so important for AP English language. And in addition, of course, to being important knowledge to have about the language you speak and about and for standardized tests like the SAT and ACT. Linguists, right? Linguists are people who study the structure and function of languages. And they would call parts of speech word classes, right? You're going to start seeing this sort of debate between how linguists talk about language and how grammarians or people who care a lot about grammar talk about language. Usually, I like to go with the linguistic approach to talking about language as opposed to the terminology that the grammarians would use. Alrighty, so continuing here. For the purposes of this class, there are 10 parts of speech you need to know. Nouns, determiners, pronouns, adjectives, verbs, tense words, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. We're going to jump right in here. You can take all the parts of speech and you can divide them up into more groups, right? For example, nouns can be considered countable or uncountable, right? They can also be concrete or abstract. But these nuances get really complicated really fast. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time explaining every one of those. That would be an hour-long video or more. Instead, I'm just going to focus on those divisions when I think it's important. And for some of the future videos will involve talking a little more about these divisions and how they apply to certain parts of speech. So, first part of speech is a noun, right? Nouns are just naming words, right? We use these to refer to people, places, objects, and ideas directly, right? If you point to something or pick something up and you ask someone else, what is this, right? They are probably going to respond with a word, right? Maybe there are a few other things attached to that word we'll talk about in a moment. Someone might say, you pick up your phone and you pick this up, and you pick it up and you say, what is this, right? The response might be your phone or a phone. And phone in this case would be the noun. More examples. For people, right? Names. Daniel, Diego, Angelica, Robert, right? Also, there are words that refer to people but aren't their names. So, like teacher or lawyer or student. Also, places, right? London, Egypt, proper names. Also, places like a bathroom or a backyard. Um, Table, car, strawberry mountain things, right? And then ideas, abstract ideas. You could argue that ideas fall under the category of things, but often linguists like to distinguish them because they're abstract concepts that they aren't something you can pick up and look at and feel and experience and throw across the room, right? They're abstract concepts. Um, some example sentences. Carla lives in Saratoga. We have Carla, noun, and Saratoga, noun. One is a person, one is a place. Mary uses a white MacBook to type emails, right? Mary is a person, the MacBook is a proper noun, and the emails are a thing. Alrighty. Second part of speech, determiners. So in English, determiners are just words that tell you references, right? Or they tell you the reference of a word, and they also tell you whether there is more than one of a particular noun, right? So some languages might add grammatical gender, so el and la in Spanish, right? English does not care about grammatical gender. We don't have grammatical gender, so you don't have to worry about that. So again, reference, whose and which one, and then how many, right? The whether or not there is more than one of a particular noun. Um, some grammarians might argue to you that that determiners should be called other things, or they fall in other categories, right? They're articles. Some people like to classify different ones as adjectives of different kinds, right? If you're taking a language class, you may have heard them called some kind of adjective, right, or an article, right? That's how grammarians talk about them, but linguists like to just think of all of these together, right, as one class, and that is one word class, and that is a determiner. So some examples might make these points a little clearer. So the definite articles, right? The indefinite articles, a and some, right? Demonstrative determiners, this, that, these, those, and then possessive determiners, my, your, his, her, its, our, their. Right now, you can think about this. If someone uses the definite article the, right, that means it's definite, it's clear which thing they're referring to. They wouldn't use the if it weren't clear which one they were referring to, because then you would be confused when listening to what they're saying, right? Indefinite articles, right? You could just say a book, right? And I could be referring to any book, one that existed in the past, that exists right now, some book that you might find in the future, right? Um, An is just our indefinite article to precede words or nouns that start with vowel sounds, and then some, a plural version of the indefinite article. Um, Demonstrative determiners, the name makes sense. You are pointing in a demonstrative way, right, to a particular object. Which one? It's this one. Which one? It's that one, right? You are demonstrating which object you are talking about, maybe even adding some motions with your hand to help you do this. Possessive determiners, right? These indicate the possession of a noun by a given person, usually, or in some cases a creature. So that, right, my book, your book, his book, her book, its book, our book, their book. Alrighty. There are many more types of determiners, but if you know these four, that will meet all of the expectations for this class. I won't ask you to know any determiners other than these. Um, Moving on, pronouns. So pronouns are words used in place of a noun to avoid repetition. Right. Pronouns behave grammatically exactly like nouns, right? You can assume that a pronoun and a noun function exactly the same way in a sentence, right? Pronouns will change based on how you use them in sentences, right? So this is one of the only cases where English will change nouns depending on how they're functioning in a sentence. We do it for verbs all the time. All European languages do, but English doesn't really usually change nouns unless they're pronouns, right? So I, you, he, she, it, y'all, and they. If you are talking about this, if the noun in question being replaced is the subject of a sentence at the beginning of the sentence, right? Doing the action. By the way, y'all, I put a little asterisk there because some people see y'all as not being air quotes correct English, right? But y'all actually does serve an important grammatical purpose in that it indicates a group of people you're addressing and distinguishes it from singular you, right? Many people uh, who speak dialects of English that incorporate y'all, right, see an important distinction there. And that's the grammatical distinction. It is a plural second person pronoun, y'all. Alrighty. Object pronouns, right, are me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. If you're in the object position of a sentence, right, the verb is acting upon this particular object, then you would use these, right? I would say, I gave the book to her, or I could say, she gave the book to me, right? But if I try to say, I gave the book to she, that sounds wrong. It doesn't sound right. It makes people cringe. All right. Possessive pronouns. So mine, yours, his, hers, null. That little Danish O is a null symbol. Ours and theirs, right? You would say something, you would write a sentence like, this book is mine, that binder is hers, right? And in this case, these pronouns replace the object in question and also indicate possession. Again, there are lots more. There are many more kinds of pronouns. These are the ones I need you to know for now. I did leave you a little tiny URL here, though, if you would like to learn more about different kinds of pronouns. So pronouns can replace entire noun phrases as well. So a noun phrase is just one or more nouns, right, along with any determiners that give information about the noun and the adjectives that modify it, right? I just indicated, right, one or more nouns, Barbie doll, factory fire, and when you add the other pieces, you might end up with an utterance, or an utterance is a thing said, right? You might end up with an utterance, the two stinky Barbie doll factory fires. We're talking about a fire here, right? We're talking about two fires actually, and what kind of fires were they? Well, they were Barbie doll factory fires. All of those nouns, Barbie doll factory, are helping you to understand what kind of fire it is. The stinky is just an adjective modifier, right? And then two, telling you how many. Two is acting like an adjective in this context. And then the is, of course, a determiner. So more on pronouns. Pronouns have antecedents. Um, an antecedent is always, or an antecedent is just the noun or noun phrase the pronoun is replacing, right? So here's an example, right? Here's a sentence. Even though it was clear to my hungry family that the Costco pizza had been sitting out on the steel counter all day, the employees sold slices of it to us anyway, right? So you're going to see here, it replaces the Costco pizza, right? Look at the color coding. And then us replaces my hungry family, right? You can do this replacement because the pronouns can stand in for these entire noun phrases. The determiner, Costco noun, pizza noun. Costco is making pizza more specific and we're piling those nouns on top of each other, just like with the Barbie doll factory fire. All right. So you're going to discover that when you're having to read texts in English from the late 17th century through the late 19th century, right? There will often be really confusing pronoun antecedent relationships, right? You'll end up with 4 or 5 nouns followed by 4 or 5 its, and you have to keep track of which its refer to which nouns. And that's today we would see that as unclear writing, and it would be a problem. I would mark that as an error in your papers, right? But back then, in during the Transcendentalist era, mid 19th century, that kind of writing would be seen as good writing, and the complexity of it would be reflected upon positively by the intellectual establishment. So when you're having to read these texts, draw some arrows, right? Start your pencil on top of a noun, or on top of a pronoun, excuse me. Start your pencil on top of the pronoun and then draw an arrow back to the noun to which it refers, and that'll help you to keep track of them. All right, verbs. Verbs are just words that show actions or states of being, right? Some examples. Verbs of action: go, speak, eat, live, jump, scream, walk. I watch Mr. Reardon's grammar videos. On Thursdays, I finish my analysis homework and then I play Overwatch until dinner time, right? Watch, finish, play, all action verbs. State of being verbs, right? Be, feel, seem, appear. There are plenty more, of course, of all of these, but these are just a few examples. I feel sick whenever I hear the phrase final exams, right? Those three horses appear happy, right? Verbs have some properties you should know about. They have tense, so present, past, future, and they have aspect. So simple, progressive, or simple, progressive, perfect, and perfect progressive, four aspects, right? So if you put these together, you have a lot of power to express really specific relationships, or relationships between events in time, and also relationships between events and now, right, to this particular moment. So when you put tense and aspect together in English, you get 12 basic verb conjugations. And so if you know these 12, or if you can recognize these 12, right, it can really give you a sense of how you can put events, or how the events in some complex text are being put together in time. All right. So tense words, right? It's important for you to understand that when English expresses certain tenses and aspects, right, you have to add extra words, right? You're not just changing the verb a little bit in order to express a different tense like you would in Spanish or French, right? In Spanish, you would say, what, tengo for I have, right? But you would say tendría for I would have, right? Conditional. You're changing the verb itself. In English, you don't have to, you often will have to add more words to create some of the tenses that in other languages, and Romance languages, for example, you could just create by adding some, making some changes to the verbs. So these extra words you have to add are, we're going to call them tense words, right? They look like regular verbs on the surface, but they're not regular verbs. They're tense words. Um, so in other places, you might have heard tense words being called auxiliary verbs, or helping verbs, or modal verbs, right? Those are all those extra divisions are, those do matter, right? Grammarians like to talk about those. But for you, I want you to understand them for now as all being in the bucket of tense words. So some examples, right? I will put pineapple and broccoli on that pizza, right? Will is actually the auxiliary verb we use to express the future tense in English. So I will put pineapple and broccoli on that pizza. That is an event that, or the putting of that pineapple and broccoli is an event that will happen in the future. You should sleep for 9 hours every night, right? This should here is expressing uh, duty or need to do something, right? And so, but the should by itself doesn't really hold the meaning of the main verb in here, which is sleep. So you need, the should here is acting like a tense word, and the sleep is our main verb. Do you need help? Right? Need is our main verb, but you need the do here. The do is part of forming questions in English. It is utterly meaningless. It's one of our rare inheritances in grammar from Gaelic. We don't have, most of our language came from Latin, ancient Germanic languages like Old English um, and French, of course, but we have little bits of grammar that came in from Gaelic, and the meaningless do is one of them, right? So this do is acting, or acts like a tense word in this context. Um, I could learn Russian, conditional, conditional form of the verb can or be able to, right? And then, so I could learn Russian if I had the time. Could, tense word, learn, main verb, right? What would, conditional tense word, she have, all right, conditional tense word, been, another conditional tense word, doing, main verb, had she not been driving, right? had the not as a negation. Negation words are always tense words, right? And then been, right? Um, be is actually makes up part of the progressive tense, right? You like I am going, right? So you're like or this here we're piling perfect aspects on top of progressive aspects and adding a whole bunch of extra tense words. You don't have to know quite all of those details I just told you about these sentences now because we'll talk about tense and aspect later, but you should be able to recognize the difference between main verbs and tense words or verbs expressing the tense in sentences. Okay, oh, one more. It must smell like durian in there. Must is, of course, behaving like a tense word in this sentence. Okay, adjectives. So adjectives are just words that describe, modify, or give more information about nouns and pronouns. Now, English is great because grammatically you can put as many adjectives as you want in front of a noun. Oh, that N should not be there in front of a noun. Right? Examples: cold, happy, pink, 5, intelligent, fun. Right? Example sentence: Mariana typed out 3 long letters in blue font, then printed them on giant paper, took them to an ugly, dirty, busy, and distant post office for shipping. Right? All of those red words there are adjectives. More information about adjectives. Most speakers don't realize it, but English has a very specific required order for the placement of adjectives. Um, Here's the rule, right? You have to express them in this particular order with very, very little flexibility. Opinion, size, age, shape, pattern, color, origin, material, purpose, and then the noun being modified. Some people will put the word condition in this structure, or in this particular ordering of adjectives. I think condition and age usually go so close together that we should just put age in there. And there are a bunch of great linguistic non-examples where putting condition before or after age can create some really weird structures that don't make sense. So, example: I have a lovely little old rectangular striped green French bronze whittling knife. Right? That might sound a little funny just because it is a long expression that you wouldn't hear someone say in authentic conversation, but that is correct, right? That's how you have to put the order. But if you mess with the order, you will sound like a maniac, right? I have a rectangular whittling green bronze old little striped lovely knife. Sounds really funny. Um, in Put before something a little asterisk um, in linguistics means the sentence is wrong or ungrammatical in some way. So that's what that little red asterisk is doing there. Alrighty. Seventh part of speech: adverbs. Adverbs are words that modify verbs, adjectives, or adverbs. Right? Adverbs tell us how often, where, and when. They give a lot of important information. In English, a lot of these, especially ones constructed with their root or their base as being other parts of speech, right? Those will end in ly. But there are many exceptions. So slowly, expertly, erratically, but also always, well, and to. Thomas ran quickly through the trees, exercising hard to avoid the onset of his existential dread. Quickly is our adverb here. She expertly threaded the needle in 2 swift movements, right? And then always stay calm and back away slowly when you see a rattlesnake. Now, in the first example here, right, how did Thomas run? Well, he ran quickly. So we're getting that information, that extra information from the adverb. How did she thread the needle? Right? Well, she threaded it expertly. Right? We're also getting some information about her, the noun, through the adverb here. And then how or when should you stay calm? You should stay calm always. Right? How should you back away from the rattlesnake? Slowly. All right, I learned a lot in that class too, as in also, right? To here is behaving like an adverb, because it's real. What it's really modifying is the verb learn, right? It's applying the verb learn to a new subject, I. Okay, prepositions. Prepositions are just words that show the relationship of a noun or noun phrase to another word or more other words in the sentence. So there are prepositions of time: before, after, during, until. Please note that until can also behave like a conjunction, another part of speech. So be aware of that. If what comes after until is a complete sentence, it's probably behaving like a conjunction. Um, there are prepositions of place as well. At, on, in, from, with, about, behind, right? You can get prepositional phrases like next to and in front of, um, in place of, and the list goes on and on. To, when it comes before an unconjugated verb like to eat, to speak, to throw, to call, right? The to is behaving like a tense word in that context, and it's no longer behaving like a preposition. So be aware of that as well. Um, of, right, is a wily preposition. So you should be aware of that. To might also go in that context, honestly, because it can do some weird things. But I'm not really sure to and of really fit neatly into the categories of time and place, but of in particular. All right, an example. After finding it at last, the cat chased the mouse past the couch, under the table, through the curtains, over the counter, next to the trash cans, into the bedroom, behind the bed, and out the window. Each of those blue words there is a different preposition of place, and of course, the entire sentence starts with a preposition of time after. Alrighty, conjunctions. Conjunctions are words that can connect two utterances, right? Utterances, of course, are just things said, as I mentioned earlier. So you can connect two utterances of the same word class, right? Allowing them to function grammatically as just one instance of that word class. So examples. And, or, sorry, there should be a comma there, and, comma, or, comma, but, because, until, if, right? Example sentences. You can join nouns with conjunctions. I bought apples and oranges at the farmer's market, right? Apples and oranges together, thanks to that conjunction, function as one noun grammatically. You can join prepositional phrases. You can join pretty much any kind of phrases, in fact. So the wind whipped through the trees and across the field. Right. Though everything there from the word through the word field can functions as one prepositional phrase grammatically in this sentence, because the and conjunction is permitting that. Okay, you can join entire sentences with conjunctions. So Mrs. Hanson waited outside until her husband arrived. So Mrs. Hanson waited outside could be a complete sentence by itself. Her husband arrived could be a complete sentence by itself, right? With her replacing Mrs. Hanson because you know who she is already, right? And so the until is joining them, behaving like a conjunction. And our 10th part of speech, that is an interjection. Interjections are words or phrases that express strong feelings or emotions. These will often take the form of short exclamations, and you're likely to find an exclamation point somewhere nearby to indicate that there was an interjection. So some examples: hey, ouch, wow, ugh, yuck. Right. Some example sentences, right? Ouch, I just stubbed my toe. Wow, I passed my calculus test. Alrighty, so that is the entire video. You can see the works cited down there if you would like to go and view the sources for this particular video. And I will expect that you have completed the notes and exercises that correspond to this video in class. Thank you.